Happy Tuesday, live Audiophile Roundtable, mastering vinyl in the digital domain with our good friend Levi Seitz from Black Belt Mastering, plus news and picks. With me is Michael T., my sidekick. How are you?
Good evening. How are you doing, Steve? I'm great.
I'm good. Where are the other guys? They didn't show up today?
I don't know.
Levi's not around. I don't know what happened to him. Where's Tim? I don't know. We'll have to find him.
I thought we had 4 people on tonight, right?
Well, I don't know. Maybe they'll come. They didn't probably just want to come and see us the whole hour or whatever. That's for sure. But lots going on. I know our friend Josh from High Fidelity Records. You know that guy, right?
I love Josh. Great guy. Yeah. Sells lots of awesome records.
I know we've all bought off him before. I know Danny came on, and he sent me a little video. I invited him on. I said, "Why don't you just come on and do a top 5 for people to see his site? We want to obviously want everyone to see what he has to sell." So he couldn't do it. He lives in Oklahoma, so apparently there's a lot of snow there or something. There's some stuff going on there, weather-wise or something.
Storm, huh? Okay.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
So did he send you something, or what's going to happen?
He did it. He did this top 5. So you want to see this?
I'd love to see that. Yeah.
Okay. Does everyone want to see that? We're gonna see it. Hang on.
Mr. Josh.
Here he is, Josh from High Fidelity Records. Not live, but he did this little TikTok thing, especially for our show. So here it is.
Hey everybody, this is Josh from High Fidelity Records. Just wanted to join you here on the Steve Westman Show to let you know, doing an exclusive drop just tonight, right now. These are dropping on highfidelityrecords.com. Tons of clean originals, clean Bowie, super clean, near mint. Don't find these very often. There's Hunky Dory, classic, Pink Capricorn, Allman Brothers, Fillmore East, UK, Jimi Hendrix Electric Ladyland, original first pressing Artisan Stampers, Exile on Main Street. All of these are dropping right now on highfidelityrecords.com. Also, I'm buying and consigning quality record collections, looking for DCC, Mobile Fidelity, original pressings, all the best stuff. Just hit me up, highfidelityrecords.com. Back to Steve.
Thank you, Josh. There it is.
Yeah, that Electric Ladyland UK pressing has a different cover than the one in the US, as you know.
Yeah, some good stuff there.
Yeah.
I always get tempted when I look at his website. I'm like, oh, spend more money.
I want that.
Okay, I'm bringing in. I just see him. He just decided to show up. Hang on. Here he is. Tim, University of Vinyl. Thanks for showing up. I was getting all worried. I didn't see you.
Hey guys, how are you?
Really good. Thanks for joining us tonight. Check out Tim's channel. He's in a new series on recording engineers on your channel, Tim, and so that'll be a lot of fun. I know a year ago you did mastering engineers, so it's nice to see you mixing up as well. And I know today, obviously everyone knows Levi Seitz. We're going to be talking mastering the digital domain, but I mean it's really good to get to see what these guys do. We talk about it a lot, so today hopefully we'll get Levi on and get to see his studio. I know, Michael, you did a great video with Levi just when I think Linkin Park dropped.
It was back in August where I did a video for Michael Fremmer's The Tracking Angle, about a 20-minute interview with Levi, and it was so fun going over there.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that. And then we're still dealing with this whole tariff thing here in Canada, and so this Pure Fidelity record player behind me is all Canadian, and so I think what they're doing, and I wish I would have bought it back then. I got an okay deal, but now their purefidelity.ca website, 20% off. Look at this, first time ever discounted month of February. Look at that. Look at that. I want that one now. So that's on their purefidelity.ca website. Crazy.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think that's like a tariff buster or something like that because it's a Canadian. We'll see. So Levi is probably ready. We'll see if we'll bring him in here. Black belt. You know what I'll do? Hang on. I'm going to do this. I'll bring this in. I want to see his website here. Let's have a look. You guys see that?
Yeah.
Some of the stuff. It's cool stuff. Let's bring him in as the website. There he is. Levi Seitz, Black Belt Mastering Engineer. How are you?
Hey, guys. I'm well, thanks. Thanks for having me back.
Well, love having you. Really appreciate you taking time. Love some of the stuff that you've been doing here. I know a lot of the viewers will have a lot of questions today, and it really is. I mean, in the digital domain, like mastering in the digital domain is a big thing, and I want to learn more about it. I know. Hopefully today, cross my fingers that you'll give the folks maybe a tour of your studio, possibly. Wink, wink, nod, nod, something like that.
Yeah, I think we could arrange that.
Cool.
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of go over some of the differences and just some of the definition of what mastering is. It's interesting to me, like right now, there's kind of like two different mastering stages. There's mastering for digital in the digital domain, and then there's mastering for vinyl from digital files. And I really do think they're both mastering stages. But I have a digital session set up and can kind of walk you through like what it looks like to set up mixes and some of the process around that. And then the resulting masters from that session I have loaded up in a different computer, and we can actually even go so far as to maybe even cut a little bit.
Cool.
Hold on. We're going to be cutting a record here on the live Audiophile Roundtable? What?
Maybe just a little bit. Not an entire
This
side.
is absolutely epic. Who would have thought this was going to happen? This is amazing. Well, I'm game for it. Gentlemen, how about you? You game for this?
Hell yes, yeah. Even if it's like a current project that you can't announce.
Yeah.
This one's already been released, so I actually got the okay from the band to play this audio and to talk about this record.
Cool.
Longtime favorite band of mine. So.
Well, Levi, let's start with that. I think everyone wants to see the mastering in the digital domain, the process that you use or you have to use while mastering and cutting a record. So I'd like to start with that if you'd like, right
Sure.
out of the gate, and then from there, if the folks have questions, I know Michael and Tim and I have a ton as well. So let's start with that and then see how this goes.
Yeah, great. I kind of start by saying like. If we want to put a definition around what mastering is, to me, I didn't look this up in Webster or anything, but to me, mastering is taking completed mixes, and you're bringing a level of consistency and continuity through volume leveling, through dynamic range control. And this is the fourth one, is maybe the toughest one of all. Sometimes you're doing absolutely nothing. You pull up a mix among other mixes and you listen to it and it sounds fine. And that's the mastering engineer being informed by their speakers, by their room, by their experience. Sometimes just a little half dB gain overall, is all that song needs to fit, better or more consistently within a group of other mixes. So that could be the definition of digital mastering. And at the end of that session, you're outputting digital files for high res, for streaming, for CD. And most studios that don't have a cutting lathe are most likely delivering like an A and a B file set for vinyl. And that is kind of known as a vinyl pre-master. We'll get back to that a little bit later because it gets a little sticky there as to whether or not that's vinyl mastering, or if that's just a different file set as a result of digital mastering.
So let me ask you this then. So the differences between pre-mastering and vinyl mastering, you sort of touched upon it as well. Can you just sort of brief again the major differences there? Because a lot of folks need to, so you can really articulate that so we can understand that, that as well.
To me, vinyl mastering is the practice of applying audio, whether it comes from analog or digital, to that lacquer master. And in that process, you are making decisions about level, equalization, dynamic range. The main difference is that when you're making those decisions in the context of a true vinyl master on a cutting lathe, you're looking at the resulting groove geometry based on those decisions you've made. That's something you can't do in the digital domain. If you're setting up a digital mastering session, you're making your 24-bit files, you're making your files for CD, then you go to make your file set for vinyl. You can be well-intentioned about doing things like, monoing bass or de-essing high-end, but you don't truly know how those things are going to look within the context of the groove geometry. So that's where like cutting on a lathe, that's in my opinion, true vinyl mastering is seeing what the effect of those changes are in the groove structure and whether or not you can play them back. That's a huge part of it.
One thing we were chatting the other day. Now, when it comes to Spotify or Apple Music, when you're mastering for that, is there a big difference in mastering for a file that goes to Spotify or the streaming services, or what do they do there themselves?
Yeah, each streaming service kind of does its own thing.
And
right?
I didn't know that. So that's, again, streaming service, after they get the file, is mastering their own file before you get to hear it streamed. I did not know that.
Right. I pulled up the website that we were talking about the other day. So what this allows you to do, it's called Loudness Penalty Analyzer, or just loudnesspenalty.com. And what you can do is you can drop your mastered file in, and it kind of gives you an estimation of what each streaming service is going to do. If you were to take like Spotify, I think their estimated like LUFS, loudness units full scale, is something around like -14 or something like that. Like, no one's going to deliver a master that's 14, -14 quieter than their master for high res streaming or like CD. It would just be like impossibly quiet compared to like a commercial release. But these services are doing these things. They're trying to level audio out and bring consistency across different genres, different styles. Quite frankly, I wish they wouldn't. But that's what's happening. But switching back over to vinyl, even that requires kind of a different cut level. But we can get into that.
I love what Scott Wheeler said, though. The trend is in streaming service content where they are pitch correcting vocals on classic recordings. It's bad.
Yeah, that gets kind of scary. It kind of makes you really want to appreciate like your physical hard copies, whether on CD or vinyl.
Well, and that's the thing too. Like even like going back to, let's say, all those Beatles remixes, I'm worried that eventually, in a few years, Spotify or Apple will only have the newest, latest Beatles remixes, and the old classic originals will be, deleted from the service. It's like, okay, why? So it's good to have physical format. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. What I'm going to do, I'm going to try to adjust the camera. Are any more questions, you guys, about
Tim or Michael?
The elephant in the room. All these people like to trash vinyl collectors and say, well, you can just listen to a high-res stream or a CD instead of putting this on vinyl. You're going to all this trouble. Do you think a vinyl cut of a digital file can bring out more than if we're just like pressing play on a digital stream?
Right.
Of course, I'm biased. I'm a vinyl enthusiast, but interested to see what you think.
It's doing something different. So when I take, if you take like the files that I had to work with Linkin Park or with American Idiot, when I'm cutting them, the audio is being processed to a certain degree by conversion from digital to analog, and then from the analog process that it's taking to get to my cutter head through the cutting electronics. There's a sonic signature, if you will, to every lathe and cutter head and cutting electronics. I don't think any two lathes sound the same. I have two lathes in the studio, and I think that they're close, but sonically, both cutter heads are a little bit different. And then the lathe operator, is also making decisions about sonics and equalization that is going to have an impact on the sound of the cut. Ideally, we're trying to cut flat. You'll hear like, oh, this is a flat cut. I think the reality is every cut has some sort of, whether it's harmonic distortion or just the sound of the signal chain getting to the cutter head or the cutter head itself, there's something euphonic happening that will make a different sound on vinyl. And then you get into playback systems, cartridges, you know, no two carts are going to sound the same. They're like microphones.
Right.
You know, and I would imagine that's part of what makes it fun, you know, for people who enjoy vinyl on a regular basis, swapping different cartridges out, what have you.
Yep. And hopefully their turntable is properly calibrated. So
yeah.
You have a playing field. So yeah. Cool.
Totally. Absolutely. Does that help answer the question?
Yeah. No, it's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You ready? We ready to master something here? Let's go.
Okay. Here we go.
Okay.
Have we got it? Okay.
So tell us what we're looking at right now. What software is that, first of all?
So this is Samplitude. It's the little brother of a software suite called Sequoia, and it is what I use for digital mastering. These are mixes for an album from Sunny Day Real Estate. Pretty much my all-time, long-time favorite band. They're local to the Northwest. They put out a record in early 2000s called Diary. Had a big impact locally and nationally. And just in 2023, they re-recorded it all live at London Bridge Studios. And what you're seeing here are the mixes that I received. So, you know, each little blue region here is a different mix. You know, the first thing that a digital mastering engineer would do is put the mixes in the correct order. This is an established record. I knew what order they needed to go in. That's an easy part. And then, you know, from this point forward, it's kind of like figuring out, well, how consistent does everything sound? So I'm going to play. I don't know. Is that blasting you guys out, or does that sound okay?
Okay. Not too
Sounds
loud.
good. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So, you know, the way that I start working on a session is just kind of like shuffling through in quick succession, listening for inconsistencies. That song's a little tricky because it's a totally different instrumentation. Now, I've already leveled all of these mixes, right? So ideally, they should sound fairly consistent. But the first thing I'm doing is making individual track level changes. So like this track here, I brought up 1.3 dB. This track, I brought down a third of a dB. This one's up almost a half dB, 0.4 dB. So you can kind of see where like the first thing I do is really start like diving into leveling just from like a general volume standpoint. The next thing I'll do is, you know, I'll just pick a song and kind of start working on how do I get it louder and maintain the integrity of the equalization, maintain the integrity of the dynamics, but then also like looking for potential issues like resonances that might be kind of overshadowing or like overwhelming the rest of the song. Like, how do I get the most clear and kind of you know, direct version of this song forward? All on top of that, I'm thinking about like level. I want to be competitive, you know, with commercial releases. So if I'm playing this track, come up here. This is some loudness information. There's my peak, kind of in that -7 LUFS level. So I kind of pick a level that I feel like I'm kind of tickling the peak limiter. Like I'm not majorly clamping down on the dynamics, but I'm getting to a level I like. It still sounds dynamic. It's loud, but it's not like crushing the dynamics. Let's see. And then I can go in through individual songs and add plugins. So like this has an EQ. On this song, I must have felt like it needed a little bit of a bass boost. So there's a 1 dB boost at 47 hertz, 46 hertz. You know, you're not really going to hear it over the phone if I take it in or out. But these are some of the things that I'm looking at and listening for as I'm going through the session. Ultimately, I would send, you know, references of these files to the client. They would review them. And then once approved, I would kind of make up the different versions, various versions for CD, for streaming, and for vinyl. But another thing, and I want to make sure I just remember this, you know, while I'm in, this is all digital process, digital plugins, digital domain. If I felt like running these songs through some sort of analog process, I can drop this track down and this track is routed to the analog desk.
Cool.
Right. So now all of a sudden, like, this is like a hybrid session where, you know, I can bring in certain pieces of equipment and, you know, add some kind of harmonic texture with compression or EQ. And that wasn't necessarily something that I felt like I needed to do in this session. I kept the process all digital. And that was ultimately what was approved. So once this type of mastering is approved, you know, I would send off digital masters. Those can be uploaded right away. This is where things get a little tricky, and the vernacular kind of, you know, kind of goes a couple ways as far as like what vinyl mastering is. So this session, as a vinyl master, you know, most people who don't have a lathe would basically, you know, make up a wave file for side A. They would make up a wave file for side B and export the approved audio, you know, as it was for digital, as vinyl pre-masters. You know, there's a lot of information online about like what do you need to do to make a vinyl pre-master, like what are some of the EQ things, and like I get the sense that a lot of that information comes from companies that might process like a super high volume of cuts or whatever the case. Like, you know, you don't always need to sum low end below 120 or 150 hertz. You don't always need to DS. Like, not every record requires that to cut well. Those are kind of just like lowest common denominator settings that like sometimes can help, but sometimes they don't help, or sometimes they make a record sound weak when it's being cut. So I'm gonna pop over to this machine here. All right, so these are the masters from that session, set up on my cutting computer. And there's something you'll notice is that they're arranged as sides. This audio over here actually wouldn't have been in the session, but I set it over there just to kind of prove a point. This is the point, you know, where you're setting up a vinyl session where like you have to decide like, well, what is best for this record as far as like, it's going to be a 12-inch record, but is it too much material? Does it need to be a double LP? Can it fit as a single LP? And so I have this record set up as a single, and I'll spare you the suspense. We ended up cutting it as a double because the sides were too long. But, you know, as a single LP, and it's not focusing, but that A side is 29 minutes and 43 seconds. You know, you're talking about a severely compromised cut level at that
inner
point.
groove distortion on a 33, wouldn't it?
Totally. Especially because that last song like hits pretty hard. I gotta change my monitor here.
So especially if that's a really a bass heavy song, having it the last track with not a lot of real estate, that's gonna be tough, challenging for a mastering engineer.
Right. My computer wants to hesitate.
And what type of lathe is that we're looking at?
So this is a Neumann AM32B. This is an earlier Neumann lathe. It has like a more modern pitch system hooked up to it. Okay, there you go. Just hooked up. This pitch system is from Flo Kaufmann in Switzerland, and I love it. I actually own two of them. I have one as a backup just in case anything goes wrong with this. But what this does is this pitch computer sees the audio 900 milliseconds ahead of the cutter head. And so it drives this motor here, and I'll show you that in a second. In fact, why don't we spin it up? Okay, so this is starting to clock with the rotation of the platter. Okay, so you can see that motor spinning ever so slightly. The rotation of that motor is determined by this land potentiometer. So as you can see, the more I increase that potentiometer, the more space there is between the grooves. And what I'll show you here in a second is when I play the audio, how that moves dynamically with the audio. Actually, let's just play a little bit here. Okay, so we're playing audio from here, and then you can see that LPI meter kind of jumping and moving. And what it's doing is it's minimizing and maximizing the space between grooves. I'm not actually cutting, of course, but it's seeing that audio, again, 900 milliseconds before it reaches the cutter head, and it's compensating that space so that the grooves don't overlap or overcut each other. You can also see the VU meters down here and the level that this would currently be cutting at. It's kind of a slightly down tempo part of the song, so even though it's got little peaks at 0, like there's still some room for it to grow volume wise. But if we were trying to cut this as like a 29-minute side, even right now, you saw those peaks were hitting 0 VU. I have the level drop down 7 dB so that the peaks do hit 0. I would probably have to drop down another 3 or 4, maybe even up to like 5 more dB in order for to accommodate that extra time. And I have kind of an example of how that works. So I'm going to put my phone on a little tripod thing, and I'm actually going to cut some audio and kind of explain what I'm doing.
Now, LPI stands for line per inch, correct, Levi, on that meter?
Right. That's absolutely right.
So by lines, they mean how many grooves in an inch, right?
Yeah, grooves per inch.
Grooves.
So I have one song set up kind of 3 different ways. This is the one in the middle is the level we were hearing it at. Okay. The one to the left is down 3 dB. And realistically, we should probably put it down more like 5 dB because that's what it would need in order to cut a 29-minute side in this context. The one on the right is up 3 dB. So you can see that shown in the VU meters here. They're just pegged, right? So I'm going to go to the middle one again. Okay, that's the level I actually cut it at. And then here's, in the best estimation, what it would look like for a 29-minute side. This is, when cutting engineers warn about, like, long sides, what you just saw there, that decrease in level from, effectively like a standard level cut to this, like, that's what happens when when you have sides that are excessively long. But now what I'm going to do is actually cut and try to show you guys what the grooves look like for those three examples. So let me get this set up here.
For the first time ever, we get to watch a record being cut live on the show. This is cool.
So I'm going to move the cutter head over to just a section of open lacquer that has not been cut on. This is a test disc, so I've cut on it earlier. Okay.
And lacquers are 14 inches, right, Levi?
They are. Yeah, you want that extra space for, cutters use them for test cuts. But the plating, like say at RTI, they'll sand that outer edge and then they'll use it for handling the lacquer or the resulting metal master. And then a good portion of it will be trimmed, but then crimped and coined. So that outer level crimping, it's important to have that extra space because you can't crimp over the groove. You want to crimp a certain amount ahead of it so that you can fit that stamper into the press correctly. Okay. All right, so we're cooking here just to show you what's going on. So the pitch computer is on. I have my depth set at 2 mils, 2/1000ths of an inch, 55 micrometers. The motor is running. That's important. The cutter head has to actually be moving as it cuts. Otherwise, it'll just cut a concentric groove. I've got my audio queued up here. My amps are turned on. That's important. So that audio will pass through to the cutter head. I'm going to try not to bump into the camera. But the one thing you'll notice as I lower the cutter head, this is not exclusive to this lathe, but it's not a common feature for lathes to have, is my vacuum is triggered by lowering the cutter head. So I don't have to worry about turning a vacuum system on to suck up the chip. Vacuum system's turned on as I lower it. So you're going to hear that happen. Okay, so right now we're cutting an unmodulated groove. It'll just be silence until I hit play. And I'm going to do that. Okay, so again, this is the -5 dB audio. I'm going to give it just a second. Okay, now I'm going to add a little gap and I'm going to switch to the middle audio. So this is the cut level that I actually cut it at. This is peaking at 0 VU, but it's actually, going into the red a bit. That's what I actually cut. Okay, I'm going to pop over to the obscenely loud one. We're visually monitoring the feedback circuit, so you can see that we are cutting that last loudest audio section. Okay. Raising the cutter head. Very important to clean the stylus after it's cut. Little bits of lacquer can kind of melt onto the tip of the stylus because it is cutting hot. Okay. So let me set this up, and I got you guys still.
Loving it. Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Okay, this is the tricky part. It takes almost as long as it takes to learn how to cut records as to get a clear view through the microscope. So bear with me. So you can see there's a measurement reticule in there. Okay, so here's our -5 audio. Okay, it's actually looking pretty good. But one thing you'll notice is that the grooves are very close together. There's not a ton of land between them, and that's important because you would need the grooves to be close when you were trying to cut, in excess of 24, 25, 26 minutes. You don't have extra real estate to work with. Going over to, this is the standard reference level cut. And sorry, let me try to readjust this here. Probably the first thing you notice is that, hey, there's more space between the grooves. That's because it's louder and it's occupying more side-to-side real estate between the grooves. You'll also notice that to a small degree, the geometric shape of the grooves is changed. And this, I guess, hopefully aligns with what I was saying earlier, is that, this change in level, this is vinyl mastering. I changed the level, which is an element of mastering, and it changed the sound of the cut, but it also changed the geometric properties of the cut and whether or not it's, playable. So let's go over to the stupid loud section. All right, so even more like aggressive, groove changes. So one of the things you're seeing here, like maybe right in the center, the grooves get really fat and they get really skinny. So that's vertical movement. That's the out of phase information showing as vertical movement on the cutting stylus. And to be quite honest, like these grooves are a bit wild, but I think they're playable. We should play them just to see if the stylus skips. So you might ask, well, why not cut the record that loud? If these grooves are playable. Well, you have to consider kind of all record players. Like a hi-fi record player that's really dialed in might play these no problem. But like your average turntable might not play them. And it might skip a ton. But let's do it. Let's play. I'm going to switch to phono. All right. Let's play this. And we should just be able to play them all in sequence. So we're in. So again, this is that reduced level. Okay, next step up, this is the standard level cut. This is how I cut the actual record. You can see it's just playing that middle band there. All right, here's your big boy. Just ripping loud. Oh, hey, there's our 1.8 second skip at the end. So that was just the end of that cut. So I'm asking myself, hey, why didn't I just cut it again, super loud? let's take a look at the test pressing of this record, beautifully done by Cascade Record Pressing. So here you can see at the reference level, that middle cut, I'm basically getting to as far in as I want to get and still have the clarity I want. So would it have been nice to cut something like, insanely loud? Maybe, but your inner groove distortion, becomes more of a factor. Your playability becomes a factor, and there's just limited real estate. You have roughly 3.25 inches of land to work with on a 12-inch record. So that's basically that's basically the gist of my show and tell for what vinyl mastering is. But you can see where I have the option to level even more. There is equalization. There's some high frequency limiting happening. One thing I think people don't do, because it's not really like a standard option, is hearing what a record sounds like without the RIAA EQ curve. So I just took the RIAA out. This is not something you want to listen to. But what you're hearing right now is an example of how bright the top end needs to be with the RIAA pre-emphasis in order to cut well through a cutting head, right? So the 20,000 cycles is boosted 20 dB and 20 hertz is reduced 20 dB. That's so audio can pass through this cutter head without the low end just wildly overwhelming the grooves and causing them to overcut. And that's part of the reason why, you get that intense inner groove distortion if you're cutting so far into the center. What you just heard is that kind of insanely bright EQ curve that's applied while it's cutting. And that contributes to that groove structure that I showed you. Why the grooves are kind of look like jagged little shark teeth a little bit. Let's see if I can show you some more. So this is that wild cut. What I'm going to try to do is, do I have my 25? So you can see kind of all those little micro dynamics and any of the tiny little kind of, I call them like shark teeth movements. That's all high frequency oscillation. There's a certain point when you get to the inner diameter of a record that the stylus isn't fully resolving each one of those movements. So, it's important that you manage, high frequencies well. But again, like these are things that you can only really see while you're cutting. Is the high end sound good? Great. But is it too much? Is it creating a problem with the groove? You just don't know until you're looking at the groove and seeing, how it manifests and the geometric shape of it. I've been going. You guys probably have some questions.
I think everyone's blown away right now. Probably need to take a deep breath. Never seen this live before. Really appreciate that. I really thought that was amazing. We got to see an album getting cut right to a lathe. Like that's wow.
No stress, right? There's only 10,000 physical copies getting pressed off of one of these for any given record. So
Levi, I've got a question. You took us through. You did the digital mastering, and then you cut the lacquer. What happens when you get sent a file, someone else has mastered it? Do you have any, they're looking for you for expertise to cut a lacquer from those files. Do you have any kind of input, or is like everything kind of locked down? You can't. That's like an approved master.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's best to send an approved master to cutting. Early on, when I started cutting, there were a couple instances where, unbeknownst to me, I was being sent masters that were different, that had been altered from the approved digital master. So the studio had made an approved digital master, sent that off to the client, and then their client and I had talked about cutting. And then the file set that was sent to me was, a master either without a limiter or had some EQ changes to it. And it took a little while to kind of put two and two together to realize that, clients were getting their test pressings back and they're like, gosh, this is like something about this that isn't working, or like, and so then they would have a conversation with me like, hey, why is this different? I'm like, well, I'm trying to cut the master I'm given, as flat or as honest to what the source was as possible. And then, through further communication, it came out like, oh, well, that's a master without the final limiter. So once you take away that binder, the limiter was kind of holding all the levels together and keeping things consistent. It kind of shed light on why the cut didn't sound as consistent. So I think it's very common now because of how the pre-mastering stage works. Like I showed you, you're mastering, leveling individual songs to be consistent, and then that's what gets approved. It's very common for that same master to just go to cutting.
Here's a question from Scott Wheeler. Are you working with is it JR Boss Claire to align the cutting style on the lathe?
I don't know who that is.
Okay. So there's your
but
answer.
I will say I don't know how other lathes work, but maybe do one of these. It's hard to do. As far as like the way that a styli is set up on a cutter head, there's a stylus inspection scope. So the cutter head sits in here, and then I put these fancy little LED lights on here. But you basically, there's crosshairs in this reticule, and then you can align the stylus within the cutter head so that the way that it pivots is, perpendicular to the cutting line. And then as far as how things are aligned on the lathe, there's a method and a process to setting that up so that ideally you get minimum or no inner groove distortion.
Levi, so J.R. Busclair runs a company called Wally Tools, and he does a lot of research on alignment for cartridges. But yeah, you probably heard about him. But he also was doing some research. He was talking to some cutting engineers, and Michael Fremmer originally researched this years ago. There was never the VTA for the stylus on the cutting lathe. There was never any documentation. Was it at 88 degrees, 90? Was and that people were trying to figure out at what degree was the lathe cutting the lacquer at, the stylus. And it seems that it's never been really documented. Do you know much about that?
Why don't I kind of show you?
Now we're becoming geeks. I know. Yeah.
No, it's good. It's good. I want to say that when I was operating a Scully lathe, that it was a 2-degree rake angle.
92. I remember it being 92, right? 92 degrees. Yeah, that's what I remember hearing. Yeah.
But there's kind of like a foolproof. Sorry, while I just get my head really close to this and switch cameras. Okay. There's a head leveling block that is used to set up the cutter head.
And that's so that the crud can get sucked out by the vacuum, right? That's the reason they have that, correct?
Come again?
part of the reason for that angle is so you can clear out, vacuum out that lacquer that's being cut. Correct?
Sort of. Let me show
Sort
you
of.
on a spare cutter head
Okay.
how that happens. I got to be careful with these things. So this is the underside of a cutter head. Mm-hmm. So you have your suction tube here, and this is the part that this little snorkel, there's the cutting styli right there in the center, and that's what picks up the chip. That goes back, you can kind of see it underneath there, into that venturi, which goes back. The chip gets sucked up into a jar that's behind the lathe. But yeah, you basically would pop this cutter head into that stylus alignment tool, and then once the stylus is on, you then take the cutter head, and I've done this already on this one. There is a special screwdriver I like to use. So we're just going to actually redo it. Okay, so this stuff would be hanging here.
Yeah.
This would be loose. So the cutter head can, pivot side to side, right? Yeah. And so you'd set your leveling block up, lower the cutter head, mitigate any side to side movement so that it's totally flat, align with the platter. I use a dial indicator to level the platter as a 3-point leveling system. So you have to know that your platter's true. Then you tighten this screw up here. For some reason, I just like the flathead screwdriver on this multi-tool. It's the one I've used for the last 10 years to do this. Pop the block connector back on. Pop the helium back on. So now the cutter head is secured in the suspension box. It's not tilted one way or another. The suspension box has vertical adjustments where it can go up or down, but then in the back, and you can actually see the spring in here, you can adjust this, and that adjusts the tilt of the cutter head. So there's instruction on how exactly to set that up effectively. When the lathe is off or running, your pitch system has to be on. These two panes need to be parallel, right? When the stylus is on a lacquer. I could probably try to figure out what angle exactly that is, because this is parallel, or this is a 90-degree angle to this. But I don't know the angle exactly. But that's how I set up the cutter head.
Once you set it up, is it good for the life of the cutter head stylus, or do you have to adjust it every so often?
I'll tweak things.
Okay.
Sometimes that's because I kind of want to cheat the groove size a little bit. Like if I know I have a lot of land to work with, but I want to make the groove deeper so that if there's vertical movement, it doesn't make as big of an excursion, or I want to make it so that that excursion is going to happen the same amplitude, but maintain a deeper groove. I can, adjust it to make the groove deeper. But that's pretty much cutter head setup. Anything else you guys want to know about the lathe?
Now that lathe has an upgraded turntable on it, right?
Yeah. So we'll pop into the other room real quick.
There's more rooms.
He's got a second.
Hang on, hold on a second. Turn around for what? What are we looking at when you walk by there? What do you got there?
Well, I just got rid of the pinball machine, so.
But what's on the wall? These all the records that you've cut?
There's a big, yeah. These are records that I've cut.
Amazing. Chris Isaak, there it is.
Yeah, the Chris Isaak was a fun one. Fire Theft, that's Sunny Day Real Estate adjacent.
Debbie Gibson.
Oh,
Metallica.
Little Metallica up there. This is the record. This is the commercially released version of the record that we were just listening to and test cutting. So that's Sunny Day Real Estate Diary live at London Bridge. Got a Deep Sea Diver record there. That one held some special significance. I cut that record a few days after I had a massive back injury and was hospitalized, which might bring up the question, like, how did you cut a record with a broken back?
How did you cut up a record with a broken back, Levi?
Yeah, I actually walked my wife through the process, and she ended up cutting that record.
Did she initial it as well? Did you put your wife's initials in the dead wax?
In hindsight, I totally should have had her do that. She's awesome.
Now in the future, if you break your back again, you call Michael, myself, or Tim up. We'll do it for you.
Yeah, we'll fly you guys out. Have you cut some records? Some 7-inch records that I've cut. This one's cool. It's shaped like a buzzsaw. That was done, I think, at Erica Records. Done a lot of Ice Nine Kill stuff.
Sarah got her shout out just now, Levi. There it is. Hi, Sarah.
She's amazing.
Amazing.
So this is an early serial number, VMS 66. This lathe was at Kaiser Century in its heyday, and then it lived at Fantasy Studios in the Bay Area. So I purchased it from the late, great George Horn. And he had posted it kind of during the pandemic, kind of right in the height of no travel, no, don't look, don't talk to anyone kind of a thing. And so it was about a year from the time I first started courting him to buy this machine until I actually drove down and picked it up. But Michael, you asked about lathe motors. So let's look at lathe motors. We're going to get in here. Okay.
So this is a VMS 66, correct?
VMS 66. This is a Lyrac or Lyrac, depending on how you feel that day. Asynchronous motor, and attached to a drive shaft. And then this is an oil basin. There's like a real thick molasses-like oil in here to kind of help dampen the whole thing. So if I spin this up by hand, which there is an automatic start, and it is comically slow. No one would ever use this. Wait, I have to turn it on first. Okay, so don't hold your breath.
We need to sing like the Jeopardy song. Right? It goes, something like that. Yeah.
I mean, we're only halfway up to speed now. Still going. Are we there? It's not even worth it. It didn't even get up to speed. No, it did. All right. So there we are. So you can see that. I don't know if it's showing up.
It's showing up, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a 60 hertz motor. So the platter has strobes for 60 hertz. So you can see that lower bar there, staying consistently in one place. So this is the motor that your, early Neumann, AM32B, VMS 66, 67. They changed the design with the VMS 80. I'm not really entirely sure what that motor is, but I know there's not a lot of them out there.
Joe told me it's a hydraulic drive. Joe Nina Hernes.
Okay. Yeah. And he would know for sure. That's his daily driver from what I understand.
Yeah.
So that's what they came with. And a lot changed from 1966, leading up to the VMS 80. I think people kind of had felt like, hey, these VMS 80s have these kind of fancy drives. We want something like that. And so Techniques made a quartz lock motor to drive a Neumann lathe. The lore is that there was only like 10 or 12 of these made. I don't know how much truth there is to that. I'm aware of a handful of people who have them. Myself, Kevin Gray has one. Carl Rawati at True Tone Mastering has one. But basically, I just press start, and there it is. Roughly 100-pound platter just instantly spinning up.
Wow.
To put a number spec on it, I think your Techniques 1200 is somewhere like about 1.3 kilograms per centimeter of starting torque. This motor, the SPO2 motor, is like 27 kilograms per centimeter of starting torque. There was one point where I was actually aligning the suspension box stylus, and I had like Gorilla Tape on here, holding it in place so that it wouldn't move, right? I totally forgot that I had that on there and went to press start, and it just like effortlessly, ripped it off. So there's quite a bit of torque on that thing. Again, I don't know if the people are still around that made this motor, but supposedly it is like a commercial offshoot of the SP10 Mark III.
Is that a third lathe, a Scully?
Yeah, so this is the one that was on the other side of the room, Michael.
Okay. When I saw you.
Yeah, it's still a work in progress. Right now we're working on the control panel. It's going to be driven by the same Flo Kaufman pitch system. It's just I'm coming up with a custom panel for it. So
wow.
But this one ideally will have a Neumann suspension box and cutter head. This is nothing new. It's been done before. It's just what I want to do with this machine moving forward.
And Levi, if I'm not mistaken, Bernie Grunman uses Scully lathes with SP10 Mark III motors.
Right. So A&M, it was something that I believe A&M had done with a gentleman named Howard Holzer. Fantastic machines. I think the fact that they're still being used is a testament to how well they have been built, and specifically the SP10 Mark III driving a Scully lathe. It seems to have held up and continues to cut great sounding records. So originally, these Scully lathes were belt driven. So there would have been a series of pulleys and fabric belts and like a giant motor housing underneath that would have driven the platter. And I wanted to avoid using that for this system. But this is the daily driver lathe. The idea is that less is more. It's a simple signal path. As far as analog process, I'm really only running it through this de-esser when I need it. It's not on every session, but a lot of stuff comes in that does need de-essing. As far as I've heard and experienced, this has been a transparent way to do that. But I would say overall, one of the things I love about this room is that I can go from the digital domain and get a good sounding digital master, make up the various parts, and then, within that same day, if I needed to cut and see how well that master translates to vinyl, do I need to make a change? Do I need more headroom? Did I overdo some type of EQ? Like, I can do all that in this space.
What percent of your records do you cut on the main system versus the second room you showed us?
Good question. I would say it's kind of like operationally dependent. Like if this lathe is working great, then I'm always cutting on this lathe.
Okay.
The lathe in the other room definitely has come in handy at times when, say, a cutter head is acting up or something just isn't working correctly. But yeah, 99% of the time I'm cutting on this machine. I'm switching back to my face. So
Wow.
I feel like I've been going on.
Jaws are dropped to the floor. Everyone that's watching, please pick them up right now. This was epic live stream today.
Can I ask him about this record? Levi
season above.
Levi is cut a new version of this being issued for the 30th anniversary. It's being issued in March next month.
Very excited about it.
Can you tell us about cutting that?
There was a question there for a quick second on the bottom.
Okay,
hold on. Yeah, I'll go back to this one. Do you stamp or etch black belt Levi in the run-out grooves of every record that you cut, Levi, from Cranberry Sauce?
Most of them, yes.
Most of them. So why? Okay, that's why most of them and not all of them.
Yeah, sometimes you know, I am just. Boy, I don't have a really great answer for that right now.
Because the other ones are say Sarah Seitz on there. That's probably why.
Yeah, the other ones say Sarah Seitz. No, yeah. There's sometimes I'm cut and I am instructed not to put my name in the run out groove.
So it's a record label thing.
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. Okay.
Michael, that record sounds fantastic.
Recorded at Bad Animals here in Seattle. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for it to come out. You know, they came to me as recommended from Pearl Jam camp. I know Mike McCready plays a big part. He's in the band. There he is. You know, he's big into vinyl. And so I was just really excited to be able to help bring you know, some new life to this cut. It's been remastered. I believe there's additional tunes, you know, and so that always
yeah, Kevin Gray remastered it once about 13 years ago, 14 years ago. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I suspect that they will be quite different, especially if the one I cut has extra tunes. It's going to be a little bit longer. But you know, it's one of those things where like they're great songs. They were well recorded. The master I received sounded excellent. And so my job is really just to be as transparent as possible, you know, with the cut.
Tim, you had a question about one of the cuts that Levi had done. It was in the comments, and I can't find it now. There was a question they had about one of his records.
Oh.
That was a while ago. I saw it pop up. I'm like, damn, I should have grabbed it. But...
You were involved in the Beck Colors.
Thank you.
Can you talk to Beck's team and we need Midnight Vultures? What's going on?
I don't know. So Colors came in during the pandemic. You know, there's a lot of catalog titles that came in at that time. A lot of the stuff you saw up on the wall. And my degree of involvement with that team, you know, is pretty minimal when those are kind of coming in through various pressing plants. The account reps at the pressing plants are the ones really like talking to them, getting approval, stuff like that. Whereas like with like Metallica was also doing a lot of vinyl reissues during the pandemic, except I was extremely involved, you know, with their QC team. So, you know, any one of those records, like Master of Puppets, for example, like we would be on the phone. I would talk to their QC person, and we would talk about kind of what did we want to have happen, like what are they looking for, you know, with a new cut, and I would do the cut, and then test pressings would go out, and we'd all review test pressings, and there'd be more questions like, well, how come this is this way? Like, and it's always like with them, it's always like they want it to be the best it can be. Like they're coming from a place of like genuine, like, are we making this the better, you know, the best version or definitive version? You know, so I love like having those conversations with them because it's all under the umbrella of like, are we making this great?
I love that, and I love that too because there's been a lot of argument about artist intent. So I guess you can tell the folks that are watching that, of course, the Metallica records that you cut, 100% artist intent. I mean, they put a lot of time in wanting those records to sound a certain way. So Absolutely. The ones that you cut are Metallica artist intent. Would you agree?
I think so.
Yeah.
Nirvana Nevermind, that came in during the pandemic. And that's one of those where like I have a copy to compare against. Growing up in the Seattle area doesn't necessarily mean that I have some, extra insight to how that record should sound, but we sure heard it a lot. Everyone heard it a lot. So I compare, the CD I've had since I was 13 years old and, the vinyl copy that I have. And then I start going through that process on the lathe. Like, well, what can I get away with? Like, how far can I push the level? How far can I push, the groove structure until, it's something that I think is, can be played back on, kind of the average everyday system, but also sound great and fantastic on hi-fi systems.
Any other questions, gentlemen? Oh, hang on, Tim. Hang on. Let me put you on. You're on mute. Go ahead.
This is a really good sounding Robin Hitchcock record from a few years ago. So I was just like checking my Discogs, like, what do I have that Levi did? And this, you cut this one. So anyway.
Nice. I don't have any specific memories of cutting that one. If you the pandemic was wild, right?
Yeah.
Like I think in 2021, I might have cut nearly 1,000 records.
Wow.
Which is insane. I more enjoy the pace now, which is maybe somewhere around, half that, maybe upwards of 600. But there was a lot of stuff happening in vinyl. People were pulling things, reissues out or live recordings. It was busy.
So that obviously that volume slowed down. What are you at now? Like on average month? Like how many would you cut on a monthly basis?
I would say like maybe average like 10 a week, something like that. It kind of ebbs and flows. So like, it seems like all of my clients, love you all, without communicating with each other, like all kind of send everything at the same time. And so then like I'll make it through, this kind of big mountain of jobs, and then I'll kind of have like nothing to do for a couple of days. So that's when I'll go through and do some maintenance on the studio, do some repairs, just kind of try to keep everything in good working order.
What turntable cartridge does Levi have next to the cutting lathe?
Oh, on the lathe, I have a Shure M97XE. That might not stand out as like a hi-fi cartridge that people gravitate toward. A lot of cutting engineers use it because they feel there's some neutrality to it. I'm sure someone out there shaking their head and doesn't agree with that statement. That's fine. It's what I'm accustomed to, and it's what I feel like is giving me honest feedback about what I'm cutting. On the Scully lathe right now, there's an Orthophone 2M Blue. I've enjoyed that cartridge just as like a general listening cartridge. But I've got a whole grab bag of stuff. I don't know. Let's take a look here.
They were asking, what's the turntable you have next to the main lathe?
Oh, that's a VPI Scout.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
That's a VPI Scout, and that has an Orthophone 2M Blue on it. Great table, highly recommended. And I think it's it's a great entry to a hi-fi turntable. Of course, I visited Gary Coe a couple weeks back, and he has the Avenger direct drive, which is like in a whole other stratosphere.
And Gary was on the show last week.
Mm-hmm.
If everyone wants to know that name, he was with us last week on the Audiophile Roundtable.
Yeah, Gary Coe, great guy. Genesis loudspeakers, really enjoy listening to records with him. Just great to talk about what we're hearing and what we're getting out of the speakers.
Question from John Bandy with say Nevermind was the goal to get the sound to match the original as much as possible, or more so what is on the tapes.
I did not have tapes to work from, so I
or
had
on the file, maybe, I guess.
Yeah. With that one, I think, again, I'm listening to the different versions I have as a reference. This doesn't mean I'm making changes based on those. Ultimately, I'm trying to get the cut to sound as close to the source I'm given. But I would pop back and forth. Like, I think one of the things I noticed on the vinyl that I had was that I was kind of eking out maybe like a half dB more level. And I don't know. I know there's been a lot of different cuts and reissues of that, and I don't have it handy. I don't know what previously pressed version I was comparing to necessarily. But no, I'm trying to just be as honest to the source as possible.
I love this question that Scott Wheeler's putting up here. He says it's controversial. Do you think that you lose anything by cutting from a digital copy as opposed to cutting straight from an analog master tape? His opinion, the digital does nothing to degrade the signal.
So, a lot of times, like, the tape and the digital are just different animals. And when you talk about tape, you really kind of have to like delineate like modern tape, versus older tape. Older tapes, 50s, 60s tapes, clearly they didn't have digital limiting. They didn't go through the same type of process that we go through today. I don't think anything is lost by cutting or degraded by cutting from, a digital source. But it's, I don't know, maybe it's like driving like a vintage Porsche versus like a modern Porsche. Like, there's a lot of technology and a lot of like difference in engineering and mechanics that play into both.
Thank you. Travis Williamson. Question, what are you using for near field and far field monitors? Are you putting much EQ into those monitors?
No EQ. Like I don't have any room EQ. So there's like no unit down by my amp that's compensating for the room. That process, I guess, would have just been the days and days on end spent positioning the speakers. I don't have near field monitors. It's not as common in a mastering room to see like a pair of NS10s and a pair of far field monitors. Although I do have a pair of NS10s, they're in the other room because I just think they look cool. There they are. But those are just set up on my TV, not connected to this main room. The main speakers are Lathe SC4As. I have become very accustomed to them. I have been trying different power amplifiers with them. I had a Class D amplifier that I used for a long time. And then based on some recommendations, I tried a Cello Duet 350, which is a fantastic sounding amp. And then most recently, a Pass Labs X250.5, which I just got back from Pass. They did a full recap and calibration on it, and it sounds unreal. Sounds amazing.
Do you have a dream artist you want to cut, or a dream album?
Yeah,
like to work with?
It was Sunny Day Real Estate.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, it's I kind of say that jokingly, but that band and like that original album, Diary, came out. I was in junior high, just going into high school at that time. Very impressionable point, in a lot of kids' lives. And I've been following them since, and then just through different channels, got to know Jeremy, who's the lead singer of that band. So that's totally like a bucket list, project. And, there's a lot of those. There's a record coming up that I'm working on that was just announced. A band called Rose Blossom Punch, kind of another local indie band that I had their CD from 1997 and always loved it. And then they're doing a re-release. They found the master tapes. They're remixing it, so I get to master it and cut. So those are always pretty cool.
Tim, question for you or Levi?
No, thank you very much for walking us through everything. It's been fantastic. Yeah, been very
cool. My pleasure. Tim, later on, if you have the catalog number for that cut, I would be able to go back, find the session, and kind of maybe give you some
cool
details about
cool
what I had to do or not do to work.
I'm assuming, I was going to ask you that too. You keep all your mastering notes, right, in case of future you need them for future reference. Like you can have a binder full or like a file on a computer.
Yeah, it's all digital, so I just keep a digital note.
Yeah.
Of settings. Storage is cheap, so I have a Synology NAS that most everything is backed up on. So I can access it from all the rooms. It helps keeps things straight organizationally.
Rex V, which album was the most challenging for Levi to cut?
There is a section in Beck Odelay where there's a lot of like frequency oscillation happening. And it's at the end of the A side, I believe. And so it's this like instrumental part, and high frequencies are really tricky with a lathe because there's like overload protection in the cutting amplifier. If the high end goes above a certain threshold for a certain amount of time, there's like a thermal overload, right? Because it doesn't want to blow the cutter head. And so, this section in that record happens only for like a few seconds, but it's like, you're going through, I think it's like a 24-minute side. So it's a bit of a time investment. You do your test cuts, and without knowing specifically like that this is going to happen, you get to the end of that last song and this high frequency oscillation comes up, and it basically shuts off the cutting amps. So then you have to go back and kind of architect your plan. Do you need to apply equalization or high frequency limiting to compensate and fix that? So ultimately I was able to get it to work. But yeah, those kind of things are always kind of a surprise little mystery package that pop up out of nowhere and you get to figure it out on the fly.
Levi, another one I really enjoyed that you cut was the Pearl Jam versus 45 RPM double.
Awesome.
This sounds really, really nice. Did the band decide to do double 45, or did you ask them to, or how did that come about?
So Tim is their 10 Club general manager. He and I will usually have conversations about how we're, the direction we're going with those. John Burton, who also does a lot of their vinyl QC, so sometimes we'll talk about it up front. Sometimes it's just like really quick, like, hey, should we do this at 45 or can we do this at 45? You do that assessment of like, well, as a 33 single, the sides are X minutes long. In that case, I think it was something like 26, 28 minutes.
Ouch.
And so then I kind of start to lobby for like, hey, here's the advantages, like lower noise floor, less processing because I can cut a deeper groove. I can potentially cut it louder, because there's more space across two LPs. The fun thing about verses is I believe I cut verses and yield like within days of each other. Because there was the Vinyl Me Please yield release and then the verses anniversary. They're sonically, they're both excellent records. They're just different. So I remember being a little nervous about like, gosh, like I'm able to do this with one cut, and then I want to be able to bring that same, level of clarity to this, but they're just sonically different records, and it kind of just reminds you like, everything sounds different, and something that works for one record is not going to work for another record. So at the end of the day, you kind of have to separate the two and just do what's best, for that source audio to get the best sounding cut.
So it wouldn't be always, I want 45 for every single file that you get come in, and it really is dependent upon a lot of different variables in. But you would prefer 45 in a lot of the stuff that you've done?
I can't say I would prefer 45. Okay. I think there are some advantages, some sonic advantages, just in how the groove structure lays out. And of course, the faster speed does potentially mean a lower noise floor. But I think what you'd run into is a lot of single LPs would then be double LPs.
Yeah, but you'd be keeping America healthy.
Yeah,
you could be the new health. You could be the new czar of health. Right. Levi Seitz.
So it's tricky, and there's a lot of instances where I do try to lobby for it, and they're like, listen, we just don't have the budget for a double LP, or they don't want to inconvenience people. I don't know. I'd be curious to hear from people. Do you feel inconvenienced by turning a record over as a double?
You know what? It's flow, right? I mean, depends on the records. If you had a record for years, and I mean, I'll use Donald Fagen's Nightfly for a great example. It sounds great at 45 RPM, the one step by MoFi, but I mean, I've had the 33 for years, so it took me a while to get used to the flow, but the sound quality and everything about that cut was worth it getting up every 12 minutes or 10 minutes. So it depends. We've had this argument before. Could you imagine a 45 RPM cut of the Beatles' Abbey Road? Sure. Just have the medley. I mean, it would just be you couldn't break up side 2 at the 33 RPM. Just can't break that whole side up. You'd have to break it up.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it.
I think there's some Beatles 78s out there too, right? I mean, like
from India, yeah.
I mean, India, 78 is not something that people are doing, but you're talking about even lower noise floor.
A couple of modern 78s. The Head and the Heart did one.
Yeah. I think I might have that as well.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. We're going to leave it at that. We went overtime. We always seem to go overtime. Tim, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you. Thanks
for having me, Tim. Levi, Tim wants Donald Fagen cut. Gotta get some Fagen right behind you there. Hey, Tim, what do you think?
Sure, yeah. Kamakiria, that would be nice.
We'll try to work it out.
Okay, yeah.
Michael, thank you so much. Did you bring any more picks you wanted to show before?
I don't know. I was talking to Tim right before we came on. He and I both have your Chris Isaak Behind the Sun. That's a great sounding. This was a Record Store Day record.
Yeah.
And I was also holding up. Where did I put it? I was holding up your cut of. Is it Heart Shaped World? This sounds fantastic too.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
This is a really fun record too. So I'm a big Levi fan, guys, as you can tell.
Well, thank you. I think they've reissued the Heart Shaped World again.
Huh? Yeah. Hey, one more quick question. You were talking about labels and budget. Do most mastering or cutting engineers charge by the side? How does that work? Or do you charge by the project?
Most charge by the side.
Okay, so if you're going to cut 4 sides versus 2, it's going to cost the label more, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I would effectively double the cost.
Okay. So budget has a lot to do with that 45 RPM cut, clearly, right? From even a materials standpoint, and packaging
and time, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. The art involved. There's so many people involved in making those decisions. I'd love to think I could just say like, hey, this is going to be best at this speed, and then they'd be like, awesome, let's do that. But there's a lot of other things to consider, of course.
Well, last night,
and not the least of which is the artist's intention of how the sides break up. This is a factor that plays in. If they don't want a song to be separate from another song on another side.
Hey Steve, somebody in the comments is bringing up Do Dirt First and Mother Love Bone. Levi did cut Mother Love Bone as a box set years ago, right?
That was Do Dirt First.
He did do Mother Love Bone.
Yeah, that was one of my first, if maybe not the first Pearl Jam project, was the whole Mother Love Bone Shine and Apple as a box set. So that was all done on a fixed pitch Scully, which means there's no computer look ahead, right? You basically are sweating bullets the entire time. hoping that your math worked out and that the grooves aren't overlapping.
So in the old days, for those people that don't know, what they would do is they'd go, oh, this side is 26 minutes. And they'd say, I need to program the entire side for so much lines per inches, right? Is that how it works?
There's math. So you can do some
There's math involved, yeah.
You take the amount of time, multiply it by the rate of rotation, divide it by the amount of space that you want to occupy. It's not rocket science, but it'll give you an exact number. And with a fixed pitch system,
it stays there, right?
You put, say it's 250 LPI. So that's the number you want to stay on. So then you start doing test cuts, at that LPI. And then if you're overcutting, then you need to either turn the volume down so that you're not overcutting, or cut closer, but it's riskier because the grooves will touch.
And that's how it was until about 1968, from what I understand, right? 67, 68, when they went to having those different systems.
Westrex, and this is where I don't have fully vetted information, but I know there were early pitch systems, tube-based pitch systems that were better than nothing, but not super effective.
Yeah.
But I would say that probably until like the VMS 66, that seems to be when the pitch and depth computer really kind of came into its own.
Gotcha.
Well, thank you, Levi. You're coming back again. We're going to do another. I don't know, do something else, but I really appreciate that. Before we go, I did get a chance last night. I've got my Hess pressing of American Idiot that you did way back last summer. Amazing.
Oh,
such a great cut.
Thank you.
I'm a huge fan of Green Day, though. So I mean, but this is. What did you reference when you cut this one? Did you have the CD, or what did you use, or just
no reference?
Yeah.
That was just just listening to what I was given, and again trying to get the most out of it without compromising dynamics or tonality. But hey, we should, I'd love to come back. I think once we have another Because Sound Matters project, I believe, I don't want to speak out of turn, that there is going to be a high performance release coming soon. And it would be cool to get Grover and Doran on as well.
We can arrange that for sure. That'd be awesome.
Doran is in the comments. Did you know that, guys?
Doran's watching today. So
Doran's on the comments.
Coming back.
Hey, buddy.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining.
Gentlemen, it was a pleasure. Thank you very much, everyone. Awesome. We learned a lot today. My head's exploded. I got to go back and watch this show now. I probably missed so much of it, so I appreciate this. Thank you for taking us to school today.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me back. Hopefully
Cutting 101. Cutting 101, right?
Levi Seitz Cutting 101 class is out. Recess is on. Enjoy the rest of the evening, gentlemen. Thank you, everyone, for watching.
Goodbye.
Talk to you again. Bye-bye.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.